I experienced amazing progress when beginning to lift weights at 16 years of age, and unlike most teens who pursue muscle growth, I made it my mission to build as much muscle as possible, avoiding after-school activities and instead focusing all my efforts on my weight training workouts, which allowed me to gain over 120 pounds in 3 years, about half of which was muscle. The reason I gained so quickly was because my teen hormones were working alongside my intense workouts and large food intake, so I created the perfect environment for consistent muscle gains. I then refined my diet and utilized cardio to burn fat, and was able to lose the 60 pounds of fat I gained during my 3 years of muscle building, leaving me with a lean, muscular physique that many thought was a result of steroid use. Yet I had never touched a performance-enhancing drug then or since, because I knew that there were too many potential downsides that I did not want to risk. From my teens to my early 40s, I could train with 5 sets per exercise and rarely ever felt overtrained, because youth provides peak recovery, so I was able to gain muscle or burn fat quickly by simply adjusting my food intake and workouts to focus on either goal. But as I entered my mid-40s, I started to notice some changes. Firstly, I could no longer sustain as much volume per workout as I once did, meaning that those 5-set workout sessions made me feel overtrained quickly rather than rarely, and I was unable to even tolerate 4 sets for extended periods without losing strength and feeling as if I needed a break. Despite my desire to work out in the same ways I always did, my body was screaming for more recovery, so I reduced the top end of my workout cycles to 3 sets, when it used to always be 5 sets. Many have a difficult time making the adjustment because they fear that if they perform less volume, they will inevitably lose muscle, but in reality, it is too many sets you can't recover from that risk muscle loss, and the wise move is to reduce the maximum number of sets to the most that your body is able to tolerate without symptoms of overtraining. In addition to reducing the number of workout sets, I noticed that the normal carb intake that I was consuming in the past was pushing my body fat higher, and I was unable to lose fat with the same amount of carbs as I could when I was younger. As I experimented with different carb levels, I came to the conclusion that I was becoming carb sensitive due to insulin resistance, which means that my body was having a difficult time dealing with the same amount of carbs as I once consumed, and in response, would release more insulin to try and funnel those carbs out of my bloodstream. Since nobody can burn fat in the presence of high insulin, I was having a very difficult time losing fat, even when I reduced my carb levels to half of what I once consumed. Because my body was heavily resistant to fat loss, even with a limited amount of carbs in my diet, I decided to try a no-carb diet for fat loss, and I was able to burn fat faster than at any other time in my entire life. Since I suffered from insulin resistance, which is when insulin isn't able to rid the bloodstream of sugar in the way that it should, even a small amount of carbs was causing insulin to remain elevated, and elevated insulin prevents fat loss. So eliminating carbs solved the elevated insulin problem, which in turn allowed me to burn fat fast. But the other benefit is that the absence of carbs and suppressed insulin caused my body to recover from insulin resistance, which means that I was able to implement carbs back into my diet after I finished fat loss. But I now limit carbs to the meal after my weightlifting workout, or my first meal of the day if I don't lift weights. Because my body no longer gets bombarded with so many carbs, it does not develop insulin resistance. And since the carb meal usually follows a weightlifting workout, the carbs are funneled into muscle cells for recovery, which is what the body prefers to do when carbs are present right after a lifting session. The last change that I noticed occurred when entering my 50s. My body gravitates to less muscle than in younger years, which means my arms and chest are a bit smaller than they were at their peak, which initially felt frustrating because my standard was based on the best I had ever achieved in the past. However, life isn't a snapshot, but rather an evolving picture, so we all must accept that as we age, our bodies will change, and we must change our expectations to accompany the new set of limitations. This is unfortunately a reality that far too many people refuse to accept, and because of this, they open themselves up to dangerous hormones in order to try and hang on to a superficial standard that only exists in our head. We need to grow mentally as our body matures physically, and the most important part of that growth process is to try and maximize who we can be at any given moment, rather than clinging on to what we perceive to be the ideal that has long since passed. We can only be haunted by what's in the rearview mirror if we refuse to look through the windshield and work towards what we can achieve today. We all will age, as no supplement, drug, or surgery will prevent that. But if we make the necessary changes to our diet and exercise plans as we get older, then we can maintain an amazing body for our age without harming the future years that are ahead of us with unrealistic expectations. Please do me a quick favor and subscribe to this channel, which costs you nothing, as it helps my content to reach more people, and I want to flood the world with fitness and life advice that works. Before you go, I have two small favors to ask. Please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It only takes a second, but it tells YouTube this mission is worth sharing. Over 91% of you still aren't subscribed, so join the Incredibody community today, and let's transform bodies and minds, one person at a time.